Well, it's that time of year again where I finally decide I need to get rid of some ammunition types in my stockpile. Now, what do I mean by that? Because I don't just go around throwing ammo out just because I don't want to store it anymore. But I mean by organizing and maximizing the efficiency of my stockpile by removing calibers that don't necessarily have a place or that I feel are just excessive. And that's one of the issues that I'm running into right now, which is why we're having this conversation. Anytime I go to buy additional ammunition, especially for a stockpile, right? So you're buying large quantities, bulk ammunition. And I have to start deciding between, am I getting this or that? Or am I going to put all my money into this? Or am I going to split it up between two different calibers, right? That conversation I have with myself leads me to wanting to do this because it's really, unfortunately, detrimental to have so many different ammunition types, and it's hard to stockpile appropriately when you're always spending money in split ways. So, I'm Magic Prepper, and we're going to talk about cutting ammo types from my stockpile to give you some ideas about how you might want to maximize the efficiency of yours. And of course, if you've ever stockpiled ammo that didn't make any sense or have any practicality at all to it, hit the subscribe button down below because we're of the same material. I think it's supposed to be fabric. Who cares? It's 2024 and things are getting weird. So, first off, I have a smorgasbord of different rifles and pistols here on the table to represent different calibers to kind of demonstrate what it is I'm trying to accomplish. And some things related to what we're cutting or getting out of the equation in order to focus all of our money or all of our energy on particular calibers that make the most sense. So let's start with pistols. I think that's one that is a little bit easier to stockpile because the ammunition is generally cheaper. However, it is easy to get carried away with handguns, especially if you like collecting guns as well as preparing. Because unfortunately, there's a lot of great guns out there that are somewhat caliber dependent for you to have the more traditional style of firearm. What do I mean by that? So like for example, if I want a full-size 1911 and I want it to be like a Colt or something that's a little bit more traditional, generally I'm going to want it in 45 ACP. But that's a problem for me right now because I don't have any 45 ACP firearms any longer, which means I would be adding an additional ammunition type to the stockpile that I don't necessarily need. So, what is in my stockpile currently and what are we going to get rid of so I can stop investing time, energy, and money into the wrong calibers, right? So first off, 9mm Luger is obviously the go-to stockpile ammunition for defensive handgun ammo. And the reason for that is because it's so efficient, it does a good job of what it's supposed to do, and it's affordable. So that's my go-to ammunition choice. It's pretty bland, I know. I'm somewhat boring, but at the same time, there's a reason why 9mm is boring. It's just a good idea, right? So, to represent that, here we have a Sig Sauer P226. Now, here's the interesting thing. Okay, this particular P226 currently has a 357 SIG barrel in it. But this also has barrels that allow me access to other ammunition. Specifically, a 40 Smith & Wesson barrel and a 9mm barrel, including the 9mm recoil spring. And yes, I do have 9mm magazines for the Sig Sauer P226 that you see right here. Why is that? Well, I'm using this as an example to let you know that this is a very reliable, very well received duty handgun that has a track record of durability and functionality that can also shoot 3 different calibers in one gun. And those calibers are all relatively accessible in the sense of being available, and they're considered to be the better duty calibers available on the market today. So this pistol allows me access to 9mm, 357 SIG, and 40 Smith & Wesson. Obviously, it works with my 9mm stockpile because of that, but at the same time, it gives me access to 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG, which have been in the past calibers that have stuck around a little bit longer during ammo shortages. So there will be a full video about the entire conversion process and everything else related to allowing this pistol to fire 3 different ammunition types. But just to give you a quick rundown, this pistol started as a 40 Smith & Wesson, which is where you need to start if you want to run 3 different ammunition types, either 40 or 357 SIG, because those two are interchangeable with just a barrel swap. And then for 9mm, you have to get a 9mm conversion barrel and then the appropriate recoil spring and magazine in order to accommodate it. And of course, it's not the most efficient way to have a 226 and 9mm, but it does allow me access to those 3 different ammunition types. Now, because of that, and because the majority of my handguns are chambered in 9mm Luger, and this one specifically allows me access to those 2 other ammunition types, those are all different ammunition types that I'm going to keep in the stockpile. Now, the primary focus will be on 9mm Luger. However, knowing that I have access to 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG, I can purchase some of that along the road in order to make sure that I have additional capabilities or even just the additional access to available ammunition if it ever becomes a problem. So this helps enhance my redundancy factor of having access to ammunition during shortages or any other issues. It also gives me more options when it comes to upping my power level if need be, maybe in the sense of carrying it in the woods and having hard cast 40 Smith & Wesson or 357 SIG. And it's also just a very good pistol that runs very reliably. So 9mm Luger is in the stockpile, and 357 SIG and 40 Smith & Wesson are also there as well in a lower percentage, but still in the stockpile due to the fact that they work in tandem with a platform like this one. And of course, you can do this with other guns as well, like a Glock 23, or you could even do it with a Beretta 96A1, I believe. There's a few other options out there that can give you a similar capability of having those different ammunition types in one platform. However, the P226 just felt like a good idea, in my opinion. So, now you know, we have 9mm Luger, 357 SIG, and 40 Smith & Wesson. Obviously, the majority of my stockpile is 9mm Luger, but I'm not going to cut 40 Smith & Wesson or 357 SIG out of the equation due to the fact that there is that compatibility. Now, let's talk about some things that maybe are being cut by mentioning 10mm auto right here, which we have in the Smith & Wesson M&P 10mm Performance Center M2.0. I try to say the name the right way, but I say it different every single time because there's so many words. Now, this particular pistol is chambered in 10mm. I've had a few issues with this gun, and there's something that I've been forced to kind of decide upon, right? And there's something I want to bring to your attention here in just a minute. But 10mm auto is a great handgun round. I can understand why you might have it in your stockpile. And like I said, this isn't a guide for what you should specifically do. I'm demonstrating my process here for you to give you some ideas about how to maximize your efficiency while also maybe focusing more on the things that actually matter or that have practicality, right? So this is practical in the sense of having a higher power round, which might be more competent at dealing with up-armored targets or obviously large predators, which is mainly why I got it, was for like a bear gun, right? Which I don't have bears in North Dakota, but you know, we've got moose and we've got other stuff that I don't like, and there you go, okay? So anyway, here's the thing. I've got this gun in 10mm. 10mm is expensive. This gun in particular doesn't even like any of the cheap 10mm. It only likes expensive bear loads and defensive hollow point rounds, which is usually backwards for when guns like to be finicky, but hey, I guess it's a better thing for this gun to be liking that stuff than the other stuff. But regardless, I can't stockpile inexpensive 10mm for this pistol. So I'd only be stockpiling the expensive 10mm ammo, which is going to cut into my budget for all the other ammunition types I have access to, and really hurt my ability to have as much 9mm Luger as I really need, which is really the most important one for me because it's what I train with the most and it's what I need to be out on the range shooting the most. So this gun has kind of put like a monkey wrench into the whole system. It's really trying to screw everything up for me, right? And so I'm at a crossroads now because there's one other pistol ammunition type that I have in the stockpile that kind of directly competes with 10mm auto. What am I talking about? Well, to bring that part of the equation up, we're going to look at a rifle, which usually wouldn't make sense, but here we are. This right here is hooked on another gun. There we go. This right here is a 357 Magnum lever action. This is actually a collaboration between Midwest Industries and Mad Pig Customs, and it is awesome. It's built off of a Henry X model chambered in 357 Magnum. As you can see, we're nice and safe. Okay, so now here's the thing. This is an excellent lever action. This is kind of top of the line when it comes to a lever action rifle. You really can't do much better than this, other than maybe if you wanted to up your caliber in the sense of having additional access to power. 44 mag, 45-70, even 30-30. There's some excellent lever action cartridges out there. Now, this isn't maybe the most practical for defensive purposes, but it is very practical for survival purposes as well as being in the woods. And out of a longer barrel, right, like a 16-inch barrel, 357 Magnum with 180 grain hard cast lead projectiles, you can get some extreme energy out of this gun. And in fact, this gun pushing 357 Magnum bear loads has more energy than a 44 Magnum revolver shooting bear loads. So that kind of tells you how much this can actually put out. Not to mention it also shoots 38 special, which means I have access to 2 different ammunition types that are usually more available and on the shelf at just about any gun store you go to that have really similar ballistic capabilities to 10mm auto in the sense of 357 Magnum being able to actually overachieve what 10mm auto usually produces based on energy. So having this rifle means I have another handgun caliber to account for in the stockpile. Now, let me cumbersomely put this back so that way we don't have an accident or anything else crazy going on. So like I said, this led me to a crossroad. Do I really want to deal with 10mm auto and 357 Magnum? And which one of these is going to be more practical to keep around? And which rifle or handgun, or just say firearm in general, is actually reliable and functioning properly? Well, the answer is the 357 Magnum lever action. It's actually the nicest lever action I've ever shot, which is for obvious reasons. That's a pretty expensive rifle. It's got an Aimpoint 9000L on it. I got an Arisaka light on it. It's kind of ridiculous, honestly, but I love it because it's super fun. But it is practical in the sense of being good in the woods. It is practical as being capable of hunting because it can easily hunt within 200 yards with the right loadings. So 10mm auto has a great place. It does very good at what it's meant to do. Had I bought a pistol that was reliable, this, I guess, conversation would be a lot harder to have. But this gun's not super reliable. So at this point in time, because it's getting close to the end of the year, and this is when I start making cuts, because I don't know about you, but when it comes to guns, ammo, when it comes to even electronics via preps in the sense of like power banks and stuff, or even when it comes to some of my hobbies like Magic the Gathering, you're going through your deck list and you're like, I need to make some cuts so I can fit in the stuff I actually need so it works right, right? And right now I'm making cuts and we're cutting 10mm auto. 2 reasons. 1, expense, right? It has the practicality there, but it is expensive. And 2, the second reason is the ammunition type itself, not even based on this pistol. This pistol, we're gonna put that back down, not even part of the equation right now. 10mm auto is a very inconsistent ammunition type when it comes to manufacturers loading that round. Some manufacturers will give you 40 Smith & Wesson labeled 10mm auto, and other manufacturers give you the actual hot 10mm auto that you want. And so stockpiling it can be difficult because you have to be picky about what you buy, and you're not going to be able just to buy the cheapest 10mm auto on the market because there's a good chance it doesn't even perform at 10mm auto velocities or energy. And because of that, now the guns you have chambered in 10mm auto might not work properly because they are sprung to a certain amount of recoil based on what 10mm should be loaded to. And there's just so much variance and so many different options out there that you might be stockpiling ammo that doesn't even work well in the guns that you own. So obviously you should always test your ammunition before you stockpile it and make sure it works for your intended purposes. But I'm just saying 10mm specifically requires you to be very picky. And that can be difficult when it comes to wanting to up your stockpile, as well as dealing with ammunition shortages in the future that are likely to happen. So we're cutting 10mm out of the equation because we already have 357 Magnum. And trying to invest in both of those cartridges doesn't make a lot of sense. So that gun is probably going to be swapped out for a 357 Magnum revolver, and then that will pair with this lever action and be a good survivalist duo, at least in my opinion, based on the fact that they can shoot 2 different calibers and they have the energy to really do some damage if things come down to it. So that's one caliber we're cutting out of pistols. Another caliber we're cutting out of the stockpile, okay? Now here's a quick recap. These are the pistol calibers I currently have. 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG, 10mm auto, 357 Magnum, and 32 ACP. Now, this was kind of an unexpected gun. Nice and safe and empty, don't worry. And this was actually provided to me by Beretta. So full disclosure, Beretta provided this 30X Tomcat to the channel for testing and for demonstration purposes, right? And I made a video about it being in a micro kit, and there is a full-length video coming out on this pistol here in the near future. And just as a quick little spoiler, I will tell you that this isn't the first one I was sent, because the first one I received had to go back to the factory and was replaced by this new one that actually works properly. So it's been a little bit of a rocky ordeal. However, this is a very niche pistol in a very niche caliber, and it's definitely not made for everybody, and it has very niche applications. And because of that, I am not going to stockpile 32 ACP. Now, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily getting rid of this gun. I think it has some practical applications, and it's actually a pretty cool little pistol. It has a lot of fun to it, if you want to throw that into the mix as being important or not. But I find this gun to be fun. However, 32 ACP is not inexpensive. In fact, it's pretty expensive compared to 9mm, right? But it has way less energy, way less ballistics, and it is not super reliable, because if you get the cheaper 32 ACP, like what I have here, which is just some, I believe, PPU ammunition, which I think comes from Serbia, and this is jacketed hollow points, right? So little jacketed hollow points, well, they don't always cycle too good, right? Because it's kind of like the cheapest defensive ammo you could buy in 32 ACP, so somewhat expected. But that being said, I am not stockpiling 32 ACP. There is no reason. If I ran out of ammo in this gun during the apocalypse or in an ammo shortage or anything along those lines, oh well. And that's just the truth, because, like I said, the practicality and application of a pistol like this is extremely niche, and the fact that I have micro 9mm pistols means that I could replace this or substitute it out for something else if need be. So 32 ACP is being cut from the stockpile, and it's possible it might be cut entirely at some point in time. As of right now, I still own the pistol, so of course I'm going to have some ammunition around for it, but I'm not ever going to focus on it, and I'm never going to prioritize it in the sense of budget when it comes to placing those big ammunition orders. I'm never going to cut into my 9mm order because, oh, don't forget some 32 ACP, right? It's just not going to happen. This pistol, well, it'll just have to be lonely one day if that's what goes on, right? So that's where we're at with pistols. And so as you can see, one more time, quick recap. We're getting rid of 10mm and we're getting rid of 32 ACP. And we're sticking with 9mm, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG, and 357 Magnum. And the 40 Smith & Wesson and 357 SIG are barely stockpiled. They're in the stockpile, so I have to at least acknowledge them because of the access that they provide, but they're not being focused on. 9mm is the main focus. 357 Magnum will be the runner-up, and then 40 and 357 SIG are more of a focus if things get a little bit tough, let's just say. So that's where we're at. Let's move on to rifles. Okay, this one has been a bigger one for me. I try to keep my rifle ammunition choices to, well, a relative minimum, because for the same reason as 9mm being very important for me in the sense of training, and it being the least expensive training ammo that still has good ballistic terminal ballistics, right? Same thing. Well, rifle ammunition is more expensive. And no matter what kind you buy, you're going to be cutting into your budget of any other rifle ammunition. And so you have to be very focused about what rifles you're shooting the most, where you're training the most in the sense of the different calibers you're using, and what really needs your attention. And so I already have a very slim inventory of rifle ammunition because I don't find it to be super important to have multiple different types for super niche roles when the main ones really get just about any job done that you need to do, especially as a prepared citizen. So what do I mean by that? Well, first off, we have 5.56 NATO, right? And obviously, 5.56 NATO, which, here you go, is the go-to preparedness cartridge. We all know that it's the more affordable, more capable, and more efficient cartridge available to the average American citizen. And the reason why it's good to have is because it's an intermediate cartridge that's low recoiling, has great energy on target, especially if you have a longer barrel than this one. But at the same time, It also allows you to carry a lot of ammunition because it's very lightweight. So 5.56 NATO is my priority because I shoot it the most. I get out on the range and I train with it the most because it provides me with the best level of training because I can actually afford to get out and shoot it on a regular basis. And it's still very effective on targets. So this is a SIG Spear LT or an MCX Spear LT with an 11.5 inch barrel. And yeah, I usually run it suppressed. But honestly, this gun does exactly what I need it to do. And it is one example of 5.56 that I have among many. However, there was a rifle ammunition that I cut from the inventory this year in order to stop focusing energy, time, and money on it in order to put more into 5.56 NATO. But we'll talk about that here in just a second. I also, and I'm just trying to keep things from falling over here because it gets a little crazy when you have this many guns on the table. I also stockpile 7.62 by 39. Now, not for any real reason, okay? Head. Okay, yes, I'll do the visual inspection. I know you guys like that, okay. Not for any super important reason other than it's another great intermediate cartridge that is very similar to 5.56 in the sense of capability. It is relatively abundant, even though we have ammo import bans we're dealing with currently. 7.62 by 39 I can still find very easily and usually for less than 50 cents a round. So it's still something I can get. It's still on par with 5.56 for cost. And at the same time, a lot of new ammo manufacturers are starting to produce it. Not new manufacturers, but manufacturers are newly producing 7.62 by 39 because they understand there's a market for it. And with these import bans, they know they can capitalize on that. So I'm seeing even brands like Winchester are selling 7.62 by 39 white box lately for relatively affordable prices. Not quite as cheap as like steel-cased Russian stuff, but still something that's at least obtainable, right? So 7.62 by 39, not only is it a good cartridge, but it also obviously works very well in the AK platform. And this is actually a Romanian Draco, chambered in 7.62 by 39. And for my purposes, this gun is very capable in my environment, which is in North Dakota, where it regularly, because I can say that sometimes, reaches negative temperatures. And there's no special preparation and there's no special lubrication or any type of prep work needed for this gun to go out in negative 20 degrees and just start laying down fire if need be. The likelihood of needing that capability? Relatively low, I would assume, because people don't usually like to be out in those temperatures. But I go out and shoot no matter what the conditions because it teaches me a lot about my gear and it shows me what works when and what works when it doesn't. I'm just having a way with words today. It's great. We're here. I do one take. Try it. I guarantee you won't do it as well as I did. Yeah, that's a challenge. You got it. So anyway, 7.62 by 39, still affordable, still abundant, still available, and a secondary option in case 5.56 dries up. And honestly, it's in that same exact category of intermediate cartridge meant for the average, prepared citizen to be able to wield appropriately with a level of efficiency. So I have this. It serves a purpose in my stockpile because of my cold weather environment, and it also is just iconic. 7.62 by 39, excellent cartridge. We know what it can do, and I think it's worth having. So, moving on from there, and yes, we're going to get back to the one that got cut because it's still an interesting topic, at least in my opinion. Let's see, we're having struggles now because that magazine is gone that was doing such a good job of keeping everything balanced. So there we go. I told you this was a little bit of a struggle. 308 or 7.62 by 51 NATO, whichever one you want to call it. That is the other rifle ammunition I currently stockpile. Now, let's see if I can pull this up here without causing a calamity. Almost had a calamity there, okay? So, go ahead. We're good to go. I just like showing you guys this, right? This is a SIG MCX Spear. This is a ridiculous rifle in many ways, but I love it. I don't care. A lot of people don't. Part of me feels like maybe they're doing it wrong. And when I say that, I mean a lot of different things. They're either not running it suppressed or they have a 16-inch barrel instead of the 13-inch barrel. They're not running the right optic for it. I don't know what it is. But for me personally, it's been an excellent rifle. And everyone who comes out to my property to shoot it agrees. So I just think there might be something off out there. And I've been a 308 guy for a long time. And I have videos where I talk about how I like 308 better than 5.56 for a lot of reasons. However, I understand the practicality of 5.56 and I can shoot it a lot more for a lot cheaper. But this is an excellent 308 rifle, and maybe one day I'll get a barrel for it in 277 Fury just to test that out. But for logistics and for preparedness, I like having a 308. It is the full power rifle cartridge that is still relatively affordable to shoot and gives you access to being able to hunt anything in North America. Let's be honest. 308 can definitely do the job, especially if you get rounds like Hornady Super Performance. That 308 is running at the same velocities as 30-06. So at that point, you basically have 30-06 in a 308 platform. And that what can 30-06 not hunt in North America, right? So like 308 does the job. Might not be the best round. Sure, 6.5 Creedmoor more accurate at range and fly a little bit more stably? Of course it is. I mean, is 300 Win Mag better delivering energy on target at further distances? Yes, of course it is. But 308, especially for the prepared citizen, it's all you need in a full power rifle cartridge. And that's why I don't have 6.5 Creedmoor or 270 or 243 or any of these other cartridges, because I don't want to have to split the difference between all these other ammunition types. And 308 comes chambered in battle style rifles along with hunting rifles and precision rifles. So you have all the options that you want regarding that particular caliber, and it's capable of doing all the things of all those other calibers. In all reality, not as well in many cases, but there's still the capability. And of course, with the right optics and the right barrel length and the right everything else, you can definitely push it to that. This gun has a 13-inch barrel. I mean, this thing is not meant to be a long-range precision rifle. This is meant to be more of like a support weapon, kind of a DMR. We'll talk about that in another standalone video specifically about this gun, because honestly, this was from mostly curiosity going, hey, the US military or the US Army at least is adopting this platform. Let's see what's going on here, especially because I can get it in 308, which is a lot more feasible in the sense of logistics and affordability. So 308 will always be in my ammo stockpile. In fact, I know I've talked about this in the past, and I am definitely one of the few in the sense of being like the minority here, but if I had to go to one rifle only, no matter what, and it was like you could only have one type of ammo anymore and one type of rifle, and that's all you get, I'd probably go with a 308, because at least I can hunt, big game with it and still defend myself with it. 5.56 can be a little bit more finicky with the bigger game, and as when it comes to long range, penetration, everything else, it'd be a hard decision. Don't get me wrong, but I still have a very special place in my heart for 308, and this platform is actually awesome. I don't know what all the hate's about. Yeah, is it heavy? Sure. But that's why I got a Mark V HD on it, because this scope, even though it's 3.6 to 18, only weighs 25 ounces. So, you got to play your cards right and make cuts where you can. I don't run a PEC or any type of laser aiming device on here for that reason, right? And I do run it suppressed usually. I just not here. So this is 308. I got to have 308. I think everyone can agree, as a prepper that likes to knock everything over on the table in the process of setting things down, including the cap for my gunpowder here. Don't want that to get wet. As someone who wants to be prepared, 308 is the best full power rifle cartridge available in the sense of logistics, right? And I can get 308 for pretty good prices. I usually buy IMI 7.62 NATO for training and just shooting, which is relatively affordable and usually found for, well, less than $1 per round, right? So keep that in mind. Now, while I'm on that thought process, I do want to mention Midway USA is the biggest supporter of the channel. And thanks to them, I can do this, which is awesome. And obviously, I can test things out and try out different ammunition types and see what works and what doesn't, and then be confident about making those cuts when the time comes, because, well, they help keep me in line based on how affordable things are. So big thanks to Midway USA. They're awesome. The fact that they support a channel like mine says a lot, and I appreciate what they do. Now, I did cut a rifle caliber. These three, if you want to include 357 Magnum, feel free, but I consider that a handgun caliber still. But these three represent all three rifle cartridges that I stockpile. And that sounds crazy to some people, because it's like, what do you mean? But I mean, I feel confident I can get everything done with those three. Hold on, there's a caveat, I promise. Give me a second, because I know what you're thinking. I know what you're thinking. I cut 300 blackout out of the stockpile. It was in the stockpile. And this gun actually used to be a 300 blackout. And now it's a 5.56 NATO. Why is that? Well, I like 300 blackout. Running it suppressed is amazing. It's extremely quiet. It's capable, right? Running it super is very awesome as well because, supersonic 300 blackout is good. It can get you out to 400 meters with the right loadings, and it has full powder burn in a 9-inch barrel. And so it's very capable in a small package and has the ability to take, small to medium game, and it's very effective on target, and I think it's an excellent caliber. However, I was literally looking at a cart that had ammo in it, and there was a case of 5.56, and then there was a case of 300 blackout. And the 300 blackout was so much more expensive than the case of 5.56, but not by a lot. Look, you can get 300 blackout nowadays for like $3 more per box of 20 than like 5.56, right? Which, by the way, be careful because cheap 300 blackout isn't always that good. And that's just been my experience. But still, I was forced to buy 300 blackout with 150 grain bullets. Why? Because the 300 blackout platform I was using had a 1 in 5 twist rate in the barrel, which meant it was better at stabilizing heavier bullets because it was really meant to be shooting the subsonic rounds. Well, subsonic ammo is even more expensive, usually closer to 75 cents to $1 per round for the cheaper stuff. And then you have your supersonic. If you want the 150 grain stuff, it's going to be closer to 75 cents to $1 per round. And now I'm having to split my decision of what I'm buying between subsonic ammo and supersonic ammo and all the other calibers that I want to have access to. And that just started causing me too many issues when it came to affordability and when it came to what I should be focusing on. And the next thing I knew, my 300 blackout stockpile just started dwindling more and more and more because I kept finding myself too reluctant to replenish it. Because knowing I could buy a case of 5.56 and save myself anywhere from $50 to $100 per case and get out and actually shoot more and train more and use a cartridge that's more effective in general than 300 blackout, right? It's got longer range capability. It's better energy on target regardless of supersonic loadings in general, right? Unless you're at particular distances, but still 5.56 is an overall better cartridge other than the fact that it can't really reliably cycle subsonically. And it's pretty ineffective subsonically too because of how small the actual projectile is. So I just got tired of trying to make that work and trying to split the difference. And not only was 300 blackout taking away from my 5.56 inventory and my 308 inventory, because let's be honest, that's more similar in cost to 300 blackout, with way more power and way more capability. It also was requiring me to choose between supersonic and subsonic. So it was 2 ammunition types in one. And although I think it's a very effective round, and I do like 300 blackout, I just couldn't keep doing that to myself. Because regardless of what everyone thinks, just because I'm on the internet doesn't mean I'm rich. Yeah, I don't do bad. I'm pretty happy, don't get me wrong. Obviously, this would be a silly thing to have on this table and be like, I'm broke. No, but at the same time, I still have a budget. I still have to work with a budget in order to make ends meet. And that budget was restricting me when it came to the amount of ammo I wanted to have on hand. And 300 blackout wasn't playing nice with that budget, especially forcing me to choose between 2 different types of ammunition within one category. Not to mention, one more thing I want to bring up about it is that I kind of had to choose between 300 blackout and 7.62 by 39. 7.62 by 39 and 300 blackout are very similar. They have similar ballistics. They have a similar profile when it comes to their size. 300 blackout is actually 7.62 by 35. 7.62 by 39 is only 4 millimeters longer in case length, right? So they're very similar cartridges with very similar ballistics. What's that mean? Well, it means that because I run this AK suppressed anyway, which I kind of have to, let's be honest. With a muzzle brake like that on a short Draco barrel, yeah, that thing is like a hand grenade on a stick. But regardless, I run it suppressed anyway. And guess what? You can buy subsonic 7.62 by 39 ammo. And at that point, because I run it suppressed, I already have a KNS adjustable piston system in it in order to, well, meet a few requirements. One, to make sure it can reliably cycle subsonic or supersonic or subsonic ammo while suppressed. but 2, because it helps deal with 922R compliance stuff when you SBR a imported rifle. So I have the capability to run that gun with subsonic ammo already, and it already runs suppressed. And 7.62x39 subsonic, it's going to work very similarly to 300 blackout subsonic. And so I have an option that exists already, that's already part of my stockpile, that can pretty much do close to the same thing. Not exactly, but close. And that's good enough for me to justify getting rid of that caliber so I can invest more time, money, and energy into 5.56 NATO, 308 or 7.62x51 NATO, and 7.62x39, which are the only rifle cartridges I feel like I need. And I've played around with all the stuff. Don't get me wrong. I've had 6mm ARC and 450 Bushmaster and all these other random cartridges I've tried out over the years, okay? I don't feel the need to have them as someone who wants to be prepared and as someone who wants to have a stockpile of ammunition. That's just how I am, okay? Now, the thing you were thinking, that I knew you were thinking, and that I wanted to address, is that I don't count 12 gauge shells or 22 long rifle in this equation. Why? Because they're going to be in the stockpile no matter what. 22 long rifle, clearly practical, has its applications, and it's very inexpensive. So yeah, that's there. And of course, you can count that as pistol or rifle or whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter to me. I've got tons of it, and I have it, and it's going to be used, and I shoot gophers all day long with it. So there you go. 22 is already covered. And 12 gauge shells, same thing. I don't plan on using 12 gauge for self-defense on a regular basis. I have a lot of other options that I find to be better, in all honesty. But 12 gauge does everything, right? So from birdshot to buckshot and everything in between, I know I can take my shotgun outside right now and nab a pheasant, or I can turn it around and blast a moose. Whatever I got to do with it, it can do. So 12 gauge is out there, it's in the stockpile, and that's not going anywhere. So, but they're not even considered for cuts. Like there's no consideration there. Like they have to be there. So the only places to look for cuts was within pistols and rifles. And what did I cut? Quick overcap, 10mm is gone, 32 ACP is gone, and 300 blackout is gone. And to give you the full list now that we're dealing with, and this is what I do. I'm not telling you what to do. I'm giving you what I'm dealing with in the sense of my process for eliminating additional ammo for focusing and maximizing efficiency of my stockpile. Doesn't mean you have to follow this, but it might be a good guide for you to consider when you're looking at your ammunition storage and going, why do I have 17 different rifle calibers? Maybe this is a bad idea, right? So, full overview, just to finish it all up. Pistol, what do I have now in the stockpile? 9mm Luger, 40 Smith & Wesson, 357 SIG, and 357 Magnum, which you could say 38 Special as well, but I don't really buy that or stockpile that, okay? It's just a whole different story. Anyway, rifles, what do I have? 5.56 NATO, 308 or 7.62 NATO, and 7.62x39. And that's it. And guess what? Because of doing that, I can invest in the calibers that actually matter and get out and train more and shoot more. And that's all it comes down to. And that's what we're trying to get done, right? And when things go south, if they ever do, which we hope they don't, but if they ever do, those calibers make a lot of sense and should have more access to availability over that period of time if required. And that's how I look at it. So, let me know in the comments below. What do you think about, well, what my stockpile currently has in it, as well as the cuts that I made, and if you have a similar situation. Also, let me know if there's ammunition types you think I should add because you found them to be very practical that might be a reasonable thing to consider. And at the same time, if you think I should cut more ammunition types, feel free to add that as well. Because I know some of you out there are going to tell me 7.62x39's got to go, and some of you out there are going to tell me that 357 Magnum has no place either, right? So please feel free to do so because I am always learning. I'm not an expert. I'm not a professional. I am a dude who enjoys firearms and wants to make sure I have what I need in case they ever become relevant. And you know what? The way things are going in the world, they might become relevant one day, and that would be a bad thing. But honestly, I'd rather have the things ready to go, if that ever becomes a thing, than not have them ready to go and it becomes a thing. Anything else you need from me at all, go to magicprepper.com. There's a lot of stuff there, like discount codes. There's also a Discord server that's free that you can network with other people who like to be prepared. So make sure you check that out. And besides that, that's going to be it for Magic Prepper.